Well, thank you everyone for joining us. We have started a new web series, and what we're focusing on is we are the company Realis, and we want to have you better understand who we are and who our founder Emily is. We are a consultancy, and we honestly we fix problems that are the hardest problems to fix right now, the least amount of history behind them. And when you're in an industry like that, there are people like Emily that have been there from the beginning, have literally written the standards, and now we have an opportunity where instead of just working with her at Amazon, what we have is individual companies can work with us, and we can come into your organization and we can unlock things that allow you to move forward in this really strange world right now. And so what we're talking about is AI risk. We are naming this Ahead of the Curve. And Emily, please go to the next slide.
Thanks. And the first part is the disclaimer that we're not your attorney. I'm not an attorney as well, but we're going to be talking about material risk. And so material risk may have legal consequences, may have regulatory impact, that sort of thing. So it's incumbent on you to do your own due diligence, that sort of thing. But when we jump right into it, and thank you for the intro, Andis. But when we jump right into it, what we saw last year, 2025, is that 72% of S&P 500 companies reported that they had material risks, and that's directly in the risk factors section of the 2025 SEC 10Ks. So their reporting to the government was that they are exposed in about a 500% increase over what they've been reporting the last 3 years. It started out in 2023 SEC 10Ks. We started to see a little bit more of the AI risk creeping into organizations, public organizations. For those not super familiar with the S&P 500, the market cap of the United States, they hold about 80% of the public market cap of the United States. So it's a very significant portion of the economy. And when you have about 3/4 of a very significant portion of the economy, like 3/4 of 80% of the economy is saying, hey, we're really exposed in ways that could take us out as a business, that's something that really starts to draw attention from board leadership, from executive leadership, who are looking at where we're going to be going. So to kind of frame the discussion, AI risk is material. Talking Mythos to your board, I wanted to kind of start immediately with the real on-the-ground facts. This is research that was done by Conference Board, who follows and does analytics on S&P 500. This is not speculative. This is not uncertain. This is, we know this, and this number and some of these like statements and things like that come out of the Harvard Business Review, Harvard Law Review. Kind of thinking around this, I really encourage everybody to read some of these articles and start thinking about the material risk to businesses from AI use, from AI exposure, from maybe adversary use as well. Supply chain is creeping into that board level conversation. So why did we start a company, Realis? I'm going to kind of pause just real quick and take a drink here before I jump through it. Knowing that all of that is real, right? All of the materiality concerns, you know, do we have sufficient controls in place? Are we covered? Do we have the right attorneys? Do we have the right skills on board? Those are things that your board actually really cares about. So boards today are more focused on not really what, you know, Purple Squirrel, the threat group, is doing, although there are very interesting, you know, threat intelligence reports coming out about AI all the time. They're focused on what should we do next? How do we secure our future, right? Not like cybersecurity only, really like how do we exist in markets? So our firm brings together things that you can't find easily in the market. We bring to light advisors who have covered a lot of the Fortune 100. That's, you know, the really big companies that we've worked at have, you know, given us the vantage point of like the highest levels of, you know, these kind of enterprise concerns, as well as, you know, the smaller players. What are you doing if you're a mom and pop shop and you don't even have like your own security folks? So we have a pretty broad swath of knowledge. We offer briefings to kind of get people started. We offer risk assessments where we come in and we talk proactively about what's your organization going to look like in the next little bit of time, what sort of regulatory intelligence capabilities do you have, what sort of vendor risk management capabilities do you have, that sort of thing. And finally, the thing that we do that kind of backs up, bottom line, everything else that we do is we bring a credibility that we can take to the courtroom. So we also work with attorneys who are trying to figure out what technical expertise they need to even begin to address some of the risks. What should I do about AI and intellectual property? What should I do about changing copyright? There's a huge slew of litigation right now happening in the AI space. So when we talk about material risk, what could take us out of business? There's also litigation risk in, how much exposure do you have to litigation? That's something that we kind of put our heads together and said, we really want to hit the deepest cuts that businesses face and be there the whole journey on emerging risks. So I'm the CEO and founder of Realis Solutions Group. Maybe that gives you a better flavor of what we do.
Yep.
But
yeah, no, thank you, Emily. And so that's what we wanted to do was, start with our introduction, and then we just wanted to circle back and remind you who Emily is. She is our CEO and founder. And you can read the text. I'm not going to read it for you, but basically what you have is, when it comes to thought leadership, when it comes to conferences, people usually have to pay to play. They pay their way in. The reason why Emily is unique is she speaks at these conferences just on her own reputation and the content. And so what the conferences are saying is, this is the best of thought leadership. These are the best people that we can find to get up here and talk about these, very new issues that you really have to stay on the edge of it to stay relevant. And so she just got back from London. She's at Microsoft right now. And so when you're looking for, support in this space, Emily is one of the few people that can do it and is the one that goes around making the speeches, kind of explaining to people, where they're at, and honestly looking forward to the future, because that other part that we've said is, she's been doing this for 15 years and she has written some of the standards that are being operated on today. So just wanted to circle back and remind everyone, why is Emily starting this company? How is she capable to do it? And, really the answer is, when you have an industry like this, there's just few people that have been there from the beginning and stay on the edge of what's happened next. And so that's what Realis can do for you and your organization, is look at the absolute uncertainty going forward and begin to clarify things to give that company their next steps forward, whether they're launching new products, dealing with products that aren't launching well, the AI risk around the company and around the products. These are things where there's just not a lot of people out there that can do this genuinely and really do have the deep knowledge. So we're very lucky to have Emily so focused on this industry, and then starting this company to be able to help multiple companies navigate this, because that's really what it comes down to. And the final thing I'll say here about Emily is, she's done so much good work for her employers in the past, but that's what we have now, is the ability for many people, many organizations to get that benefit. And so really, I'm really happy to be here working with Emily as well. And so I'll hand it back to Emily, and you can move on with the next part of the content.
I'm always overwhelmed when someone reads my bio by how kind people are when they talk about me, and I want folks to know that we really do appreciate you for joining us for our first one, and talking about how we deliver on clarity. We focus on, like I was mentioning, the highest end of risk services. We focus on issues around regulatory compliance, emerging risk, cyber threat intelligence, geopolitical, emerging technology. And so we make those issues make sense in a way that you can take action on them and make the right decisions in your business, focusing more on that than the the kind of speculative and informative. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is kind of the board perspective here. So we talked about materiality, and we talked about what they're seeing come out in the reporting, what we're all seeing. You can go look up anybody's 10K, obviously. Many of you know this, but of course, but like, what is the board thinking about this? So we know from, studies that tell us things, right, around, like how much time do people spend doing this? How do people feel about that? We know that about 63% of public companies have their CISOs go in front of the board at least quarterly or more. So when it comes to things like Mythos, so for those who are, didn't avail themselves of all of the, like, what's Project Glasswing, what's Mythos, all that sort of thing, as kind of any pre-reading or anything like that, the board is asking, how do we navigate AI? This is almost a very spacious question. So it comes down to the moment, and you're a C-level executive or the person responsible for supporting them and presenting the findings that you have to the board on any matter in particular. And when you get into these meetings, they are not a long presentation. It's not a long conversation. That 63% of CISOs that's getting in front of their board quarterly has 10 to 15 minutes tops. And AI is just one issue. So if you're talking about that particular issue, or you're the chief risk officer, or you're the CIO, or you're the CEO, and somebody's asking you from the board perspective, the president of the board sitting across from you, how are we doing for AI? Today, that's a really unanswerable question for many organizations. And we're hearing from our partners. I'm out here at Microsoft at Blue Hat. I'm seeing it on the floor. We saw this at RSA conference when we were, kind of there doing conversations with folks. People are asking for help with this area. One of the big motivations that we had in putting together any kind of like series on like how to talk to your board was the number of people who are going around to their vendors and asking, hey, what are you saying? What are you doing? And kind of bringing the knowledge we have together to talk about it. So boards are looking at, from an AI kind of point of view, roughly 4 things. One of them is like, how does it matter to the growth of our business? Is it not really a risk conversation unless you think about it as an existential risk? Many CEOs are thinking about, if we don't use AI, we're going to not be here next year. Boards are thinking that too. Another area is like, where's the cost? Where's it going to return value? Are we going to actually have any ROI on this? This is, again, not necessarily a risk question, but it's informed by the risk you have in the business. The last couple of questions that people tend to look at here are, where are we at for regulatory? Are we incurring liabilities? And then finally, are we exposed to any of the kind of concerns? I have a quote that I'm going to get to kind of one of the next conversations about, like adversary risk, external risk. And the thought that I have here on this is, it's such a brilliant quote, but it's the bad guys have AI too. So I'm going to tease that, but not really talk about it. So if you're a board level executive, somebody who has board assurance accountabilities, you are going to answer these questions in just a couple minutes. You don't have a lot of time, and there's really no alignment today on what good looks like yet. So while I have supported risk management frameworks, both at AWS, developing risk management tools there, I got to represent AWS to the High Trust Alliance AI Assurance Working Group. So if you're certifying in the healthcare space, using High Trust, there's now certification you can get for AI systems that I contributed to. There's NIST, there's OWASP, there's MITRE. We gave a talk there last year. These are some organizations that I'm affiliated with, or have worked with, or advised, or connected with in the past at various points. But when you're looking at it on the ground level, there's really no final way to answer this question for your board. There's no way to say we did the full checklist of 27,000 things that exist. It's a little assurance joke for you there. But there's no checklist that says if we do these things, that's good enough. We're good on AI. We're successful in the market. We have experienced the positive benefits of like AI, and there's no way to say we're not exposed at all. And this kind of gets into the Mythos conversation. So if you haven't read the press release and you haven't looked at the kind of media coming out around it and what the board is thinking about kind of conversations, Mythos is the new kind of Claude model come out from Anthropic. OpenAI actually just released another model as well. There's kind of international media attention to this. The AI Safety Institute in the UK has published benchmarks on both of them as like a government research group doing that sort of thing. And what they said in the press release for Project Glasswing, which is the 12 companies, Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, CrowdStrike, Cisco, etc. If I didn't name them, it's not because I don't like them. It's fine. But they got together with Anthropic and they said, we're all going to band together to launch a model, Claude Mythos. And that model can do vulnerability discovery and find initial access points to different applications and toolkits and whatever. We're finding bugs that have been sitting around for 27 years, et cetera. We can do it at a speed and at a rate and at a volume and that is unprecedented. And we're not going to release this live because there's just too much concern we have that this will be a problem for folks at large. So us 12 companies, we're going to do this together. The thing about it that some people catch on to, some people don't, but your board definitely should be kind of aware of is that one of those organizations was JP Chase. JP Chase is a systemically important financial institution. And when you look at kind of the public trading and the kind of connection between how things work, the Security Exchange Commission reporting that public companies do, right? The next day after Glasswing was announced, the Fed and the Federal Reserve and the Treasury called a bunch of the kind of bank leadership to Washington, D.C. to have a conversation about what we should do next. And for those who don't kind of live and breathe the policy side, the kind of simple thing there is that's a sign that they're taking it seriously. So there's been a good amount of reporting through different outlets that focus on the financial sector about what that means and what's going on. And you can look at the financial services sector particularly as kind of an indicator of where there's real governmental concern in certain places around risk management. They're quite proactive there. But when you see an announcement like this come out and you look at the 12 companies that made it up, it's a systemic bank. It's a total of, that we mentioned the S&P 500, and they're about 80% of the market cap is held by these companies. If you look at the amount of the market capitalization in the United States, and your board cares about this deeply, most likely, about a third of the S&P 500's market cap is held by those 12 organizations. So between that sort of thing and the fact that it was also included a systemic bank, and there was response from the kind of financial regulators and global organizations are concerned about it. There's reports that maybe there's even been leaks and that sort of thing. This is quite concerning for executive leaders, even outside the risk space, because they don't know what's going to happen next. And again, we're talking about really one capability, vulnerability discovery. We're talking about the ability for AI tools to find vulnerabilities in software and in hardware as well. But generally speaking, that's just one thing the adversaries do. It's not everything. It doesn't mean put a full stop on every other security activity. And so when you're talking to your board, you need to be thinking about, we're not going to throw the entire baby out with the bathwater and say, this is the only thing we care about. But about a quarter of the US economy is represented by these 12 companies, believe it or not, right? So if you look at just the size, and when they say things like the fallout for economies, public safety, and national security could be severe. I know I just read your slide. I apologize for that. But looking back at 72% of 80% of the market cap says we're at serious risk due to AI. And then, 30% of 80% say this could really hurt us. The fallout could be severe. And you look at kind of the general trends and uncertainty, your board does want to hear about this. I've been advising companies that if you're going in front of the board to talk about this, you need to be going with an explanation of what you already have done or what you will be doing, and a funding ask, even if it's going to require more effort. One of the things that's particular when you're making that funding ask is talking about like the bug bounty programs that companies typically run. If I have 100 bug tickets a year, and suddenly I have 1,000 bug tickets a year, that's a 10x multiplier in the amount of issues that I'm seeing. It simply costs me the same amount to triage those vulnerability tickets and those possible vulnerabilities, whether or not there's more or less of them. So just on that issue alone, it's going to cost companies more to address this. We're seeing this in the legal sector as people use generative AI to represent themselves pro se. We're seeing this in other industries where people are using generative AI to kind of accelerate their processes. The people on the back end who do due diligence and have to read all this stuff end up doing more work. But aside from the extra effort, it really is a strong concern for companies as they're trying to navigate this. And that comes to the question of the bad guys have AI too. So kind of the final thought that I'm going to leave you all on is vulnerability discovery is just one capability. This is a board, like a director level quote. This is from a board. The bad guys have AI too. So out in the wild, we know that capabilities from a technology standpoint, like to do vulnerability discovery, we're already out there. Like very quickly after we started seeing, ChatGPT, we started seeing like Worm GPT and these tools that were available for license on the dark web. I've heard that the price of it, I don't have a license to Worm GPT personally, but I heard that it started about $50 and then the price went up and things like that. Tools for exploitation, tools for, like reconnaissance, those sorts of things. Given the technology to do more with less is prevalent for everyone. This is another thing that kind of pours fuel on the fire. The Mythos discussion needs to also include not just what you're doing for your kind of defender side, cost management, risk management functions, whether that's an extra ask just for vulnerability discovery or also for the increased breach risks or any of that other stuff, some of the regulatory compliance concerns. But you really need to also be able to explain to your board what the adversarial threat landscape looks like. I'm going to stop there and make sure that we have time for the discussion questions or any further things before I get into any more. But those kind of points are things that I know will help you when you go in front of your board or when you are preparing for those board level discussions or even C-level discussions that have that same flavor. I really thank you for joining. And then back to you, Anders.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. What we are doing here is really just showing you what Realis is and then letting you know how to start working with us. Just want to give you a little bit of context because you're like, Emily, I understand where she's coming from. On myself, you're like, well, why is he here? Well, the thing is that I do this, but for clean energy. And I am just like Emily in that, like, I'm like, oh, I wrote that law and I was the first to sell that. And so I really, really recognize that when you have an industry that is so new, so few people have been there since the beginning of it, that when it comes to these really big questions of what do I do as an organization, that's what I do in the clean energy industry. I do that for solar installers. I do that for policy organizations. And so it really, really lands for me very well what Realis is doing in that it's a unique problem. And so what I really want to let you know about right now is how do you start working with Realis? And it's actually really easy because what you need to find is a sponsor in your organization that can take on a consultant for a small fee, because what we're going to do is we're going to come in and make a big impact right away. And that big impact is going to be felt. And then the team is going to say, okay, what more can we do with Rail? So when you think about our products, it's a lot more like, how do we get through the door and solve an outsized problem to the contract because we want to impress? And then from there, your organization is going to say, well, the thing is when something is so new and something is changing so much, we can't just, like all of these companies can't just hire someone to solve that problem for them. This really is best dealt with as a consultant. And so that's what we're doing is we're enabling and we're unlocking. And so there's a number of ways that you can use us. You can use us internally to say, I need to solve this problem and I need to report up to the executive team. We can help with that problem. We can help on the executive level where they say, okay, you used a really great consultant there. Can we use that at the executive level? Yes, you can. And then the other thing is if you have clients that are also experiencing that inability to create direct, clear action to move forward on an item, product adoption, product launch, whatever their item is as well, you can bring us in. We can create clarity for them, which they can then unlock customers for you. So what you can see is that Realis is a tool that unlocks action at a time when something is so new and changing so much that you can't really find people like this. Not every company can hire these resources. And so that's why what we're saying is, hang out with us next week, come back, we'll talk more, ask any questions you have right now, but also book a consultation with us. We'll dive into what your needs are. We'll set up how an initial engagement can really move the needle for you on whatever issue you have. And then from there, our impact can grow for your organization. So book a consult, follow us on LinkedIn, and then also follow us on Substack, because if you're saying, this really sounds good and I want to hear more from Emily, right there is where she is publishing her longer format thoughts on these topics. And that brings us to the end of our time. If we don't have any questions in the chat, that's totally fine. Follow up with us. Emily, if you have one more big takeaway, go for it. Otherwise, we'll say cheers to everyone.
Yeah, I think I wanted to kind of bring this home about what people are telling their board currently and how that's not going to work. So if we look at some of the kind of board reporting that's happening today, especially around this emerging risk from, potentially we're going to see more vulnerability discovery, and that could crush our security teams. Telling your board things like we have an AI policy signals to your board that we're good. It doesn't signal to them we're going to run out of runway. It doesn't signal to them that we have we don't have what we need. There's a lot of kind of output metrics and count-based metrics and means-based metrics that are being used to report to boards, and not just in the security space, not just in the risk space, but we have an AI policy. So what is it implemented? We have people took training on how to use LLMs. Boards are actually wondering, well, does that mean that we're going to lose the workforce that we have and we're not going to be able to keep them here because they have skills we gave them, but we didn't realize any value from that? So instead of talking to your board about these kind of means-based, output-based, count-based metrics, we're really encouraging people as we engage to communicate to their boards, we're facing market headwinds just like everyone else. Here's all the data points. This is something, we talk to folks about, again, that first consult is just 20 minutes, bring your top question and we answer it. It's not a contract, it's not a fee thing. It's just the first 20 minutes discussion. But what are the things that actually impact you and your part of the market? How effective are you from a governance and operational efficacy standpoint? So this is kind of an example case. So we were exposed to 850 million in risk. How did we get to that number? If we're looking at, breach cost and some of these things that we know are true about actual quantitative and qualitative risk analysis, we bring that discipline in to kind of put a number to what we need to be looking at. And then the final thing is, what's your action plan? So I haven't given a number to this because everybody has a different set of needs. But when it comes down to it, part of the action that needs to happen, especially for Mythos, and the kind of final thought here is make sure that you're not going to your board with, it's all fine, we're good, we have people trying generative AI tools, we have a policy. Go to them with the, hey, stuff's actually happening outside. We know you see it, we see it too. We have actually prepared for you a little bit of understanding of where we're exposed and not exposed, and we think it'll cost this much to remediate, or we're actually doing great and we don't need to do anything at all. So I, again, thank you for your time spent with us today. That's at the end of the 30 minutes. So we're going to make sure that we end on time.
Great. No, I really appreciate that, Emily. I really appreciate everyone that came to our presentation. Do engage with us afterwards, and I'll end with a joke. I usually say, don't bring a human to an AI fight, but I think Emily is one of the few people you actually do want to bring to an AI fight. So thanks for joining us today, and we hope to be meeting with you in the near future.